Alright, let's dive into something that's been buzzing in my mind lately, Miranda Kerr's Bison diet and why it's a perfect example of everything that's gone wrong with podcasting. Now, before we get into the weeds, let me just say this. I'm not here to judge Miranda Kerr's lifestyle choices. If bison and venison are her thing, more power to her. But what really caught my attention, and honestly, left me a bit baffled, was the way her diet was discussed on a podcast, and the broader implications of that conversation. Here's the hook. Miranda Kerr, a model, skincare mogul, and wellness guru, recently appeared on Kristin Cavallari's podcast to talk about her diet. And let me tell you, it's not your average eat your veggies kind of chat. We're talking bison, venison, no eggs, no sushi because of parasites, and a hard pass on kale and spinach. Now, personally, I think there's a lot to unpack here, but what makes this really interesting is the way it was received. Cavallari, the host, just nodded along, marveling at how super healthy Kerr is. And that, my friends, is where the problem lies. From my perspective, this isn't just about a restrictive diet or questionable health advice. It's about the unchecked platform that podcasts provide. Unlike traditional media, podcasts are largely unregulated. There's no fact-checking, no accountability, and no real consequences for spreading misinformation. What many people don't realize is that this lack of oversight has turned podcasts into a breeding ground for pseudoscience and harmful advice. I mean, think about it, if a BBC newsreader promoted a diet that avoids spinach because of oxalates, they'd be held accountable. But on a podcast, it's just another day in the wild west of broadcasting. One thing that immediately stands out is how podcasts have become a PR tool for celebrities. It's not about honest conversation. It's about mutual promotion. Guests appear on shows to push their brands, and hosts play along because they want to stay in the good graces of their guests. It's a cycle of sycophancy that, in my opinion, does a disservice to listeners. I get it, podcasts are intimate, free-form, and unfiltered, which is part of their charm. But when that unfiltered nature leads to the normalization of harmful or baseless claims, we've got a problem. What this really suggests is that podcasting, as it stands, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's democratized broadcasting, giving a voice to anyone with a mic and an idea. On the other hand, it's created an ecosystem where misinformation can thrive unchecked. Take Joe Rogan's podcast, for example. It's one of the most popular shows out there, but it's also been a hotbed for conspiracy theories and questionable advice. And while not every podcast is like that, the lack of regulation means that listeners are often left to discern fact from fiction on their own. If you take a step back and think about it, the issue isn't just about what's being said on these shows, it's about what's being accepted. When a host like Cavallari nods along with Kerr's diet without questioning it, she's implicitly endorsing it. And that endorsement carries weight, especially when you're talking about millions of followers. This raises a deeper question. Should podcast hosts have a responsibility to fact-check or challenge their guests? Or is it enough to just let the conversation flow, no matter how questionable the content? A detail I find fascinating is how podcasting has evolved into a video medium. Shows are now filmed and clipped into short-form content for social media, which means these conversations are seeping into our passive consciousness. It's not just about actively choosing to listen to a podcast anymore. It's about these ideas being algorithmically parachuted into our feeds. And that, in my opinion, is far more insidious than traditional media. Because when you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, you're not necessarily in a critical mindset. You're just absorbing. So, where does this leave us? Personally, I think it's time for a reckoning in the podcasting world. We need more accountability, more fact-checking, and maybe even some regulation. I'm not saying we should stifle free speech, but there's a difference between free speech and reckless broadcasting. Podcasts have the power to shape opinions, influence behavior, and even change lives. Shouldn't we hold them to a higher standard? As I wrap this up, I'm left with a thought-provoking question for all of you. How much responsibility should podcast hosts bear for the content they platform? Is it enough to just let the conversation flow, or do they owe it to their listeners to challenge misinformation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you're still thinking about Miranda Kerr's bison diet, maybe just stick to your spinach, it's probably fine. Thanks for watching, And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more rants and reflections like this one.